and replace our okay. Here we are on a Friday, and okay, let's just start out. Imagination. And now I'm doing a movement. See the figure eight? And when I'm doing right here, there's a loop or a beat, a loop or a beat. Now I'm doubling up on still figure eight. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, what's the imagination right there? Just doing a movement. Imagination is not thinking. For whatever reason, I'm getting butterfly wings. Butterfly wings. Butterfly wings. And one of the things about it is people have kind of mentioned you try to hit a butterfly with a baseball bat. It's impossible. It just seems to hang there. But when you come to hit it, you can't. So basic movement, we get a loop and a loop. That's a figure eight. Now what I'm doing is going double loop, double loop, double loop, double loop. Right to left, left back to right. And imagination a lot of times kind of works on images. So for whatever reason, I'm getting butterfly. Butterfly. Okay. Cliff, anything?
I like the image. That's what I got.
Well, people don't get this. Imagination doesn't have a lot to do with thinking. Because when you think, it takes all your energy. And imagination, there's a lot of energy to imagination. Boom, 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 boom. Now, for example, here, I'm kind of getting, for example, here, it seems like that's a stop and then it starts, but it's more like a pause and then boom, 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 boom. So it's not dot, 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 but dun, 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 dun. So what those pauses are, they're more space. Or in music, music is going, but there's a pause. And then the sound stops and then it starts again, but it's on a beat, isn't it? So boom, 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 boom. How many pauses at one? Two. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Now there's some footwork, so I'm going from a harmony change to a harmony change, but right about boom, 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 boom. Okay, so in other words, there's movement and there's space. Now, when you're in the space or the pause, you don't set and then start the movement again. The movement's just there. Okay, so we do that sometimes. A good Irimi entering motion, somebody comes to hit, Again, we get the butterfly effect. Somebody comes, has a baseball bat, they're going to try to hit a butterfly, but the butterfly just keeps butterflying. Okay, right here. Boom, 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 boom. Now, for me, now past imagination, there's a pause here. There's a pause here, pause here, pause here, pause here, pause here. Pause here, pause here, pause here, pause here, pause here, pause here. Okay? And past imagination, there's what I might call discernment. What is that pause? Okay. Somebody grabs your wrist, you do this, it jams up. There's a pause. Somebody comes to hit you, and all of a sudden there's a pause there. Okay. So what is that pause? Within the motion, another dimension is trying to show that of space. Space, 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 space. Space is always there. There's a movement, the energy movement, there's the space. Okay. Anything?
Yeah, I noticed that kind of pause a lot when I was in class yesterday, when I was Nage especially.
Yeah.
Where, and then sometimes it didn't jam up and I just noticed the transition, but sometimes I'm like, oh, that's not working. And then I would make an adjustment, relax, move where I was, rearrange myself to a better position vis-a-vis uke, and then it would flow.
Okay. Now another word came in. Okay. Now imagination is important, but discernment out of the imagination. For example, the word is transition. We go here and we go here. That's a set and a stead. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But here, boom, 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 boom. This transitions to that, which transitions to that, which transitions to that, which transitions to that, which transitions to that. So all of a sudden, going from a pause, what that pause is space. But the space appearing allows you to transition from this motion to that motion, to that motion, to that motion, to that motion. So a step past the imagination is discernment. Boom, boom. Basic form, up and down. I'm doing that thumb's face, which I call the second hand change. First, second, third. Okay? Boom, boom. I can do that with the first. It's a little different. For example, that same motion. Boom, boom. Now, even though it's fast, there's a pause at the top. Boom, boom. It's not that motion. It's that motion. That motion. Okay? And I switch my grip. We go boom, boom. 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 I'm discerning that that motion has a bit more roundness to it. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. So imagination works with discernment. Boom, boom. The imagination, you're sensing space, you're sensing transition. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, anything?
Nothing intelligent to add at the moment. You are about to hear a beep as I switch devices.
Yeah, that's fine. As a matter of fact, we've got a, I'm going to put the clock here so we have a sense of what the time. Yes. Okay, good. Okay. standing, for example, it's kind of more in space. But we're at that place where the space can transition to movement, or that motion can transition back into space.
Well, I do have one additional thought.
Okay.
So, speaking of space, objects in space, as we know, planets and moons, tend to have elliptical orbits rather than fully circular, which means that for part of the orbit, they're kind of like zooming along on a narrow curve, and part of the orbit, they're kind of slower because it's a wide curve, right? That's in terms of ground covered, and so, or angle change. And so I feel that like when I'm doing the double helix, but especially that last movement where I was going from the down to the above my head, right? I'm feeling like, oh, it's like perigee and apogee of an orbit, the change. So it's like a flow or like a wave kind of thing, rather than like a stop and a restart. So that was what I was feeling.
Well, if you take a baseball and you deliver it with a certain sort of spin, a lot of things happen. Like sometimes, it starts to disappear, or it jumps. It becomes like that butterfly. You come to hit it, boom, and it goes dee-dee, or doo-doo. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. And kind of when you're in that, we say that imagination place, stillness, but stillness is transition. Still, boom, 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 still becomes a thing. It is and it isn't. Boom, boom. It's a transition area that segues into that, segues into that, segues into that, segues into that. Boom, boom. Okay? So, and for example, if you hold a baseball, I have one. Well, when I was a lot younger, I had this. I never played baseball, but I had a friend and we played strikeout. We like to pitch and hit, so I like pitching more than hitting. But you hold a baseball and you kind of hold it a little bit to the side. And so what happens when you deliver it, the ball has a spin to it. And that spin, sort of with the seams and the air pressure and everything like that, boom. It's kind of an unpredictability, right? Or if you get a tight spin, boom. Or you. So I always was thought it was fun to take a sphere and it's a little bit like that orbit you're talking about. It's a straight line, but add a spin to it. Okay, and maybe on some level, if you try to hit Hiro Sensei, he's like that butterfly, not moving fast. All right, I'll put that there for now. And so sometimes when you're hanging out in that imagination space, you get, okay, for example, substantial, insubstantial, substantial, insubstantial, insubstantial, substantial, insubstantial, substantial, 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 insubstantial. All right? Boom. So you can say one's yin, one's yang, okay? But again, we put it into words and we start to think about the meaning of the words, and all of a sudden, we're not in that imagination space anymore. Now, right there, that motion is very interesting because there's that pause there without a set. Boom, 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 like that. Okay. Okay. Boom, boom. Okay. Image I get, for example, you get one of those things, you know, that covers a window, and you go, it goes up, and it's a dark room, and then the sunlight comes in. Boom, boom. That's going up, and all of a sudden, that's the sunlight coming in. Boom, boom. But there's a transition. Boom, boom, boom. And that transition wouldn't necessarily be recorded if you were recording digital time. It's just, but it's there. Something that you sense, imagine. Boom, 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 boom. So just a little motion. Boom, boom. All right. It's the whole universe, literally, of imagined sense. Okay. Anything?
Yeah, when I'm doing that motion, I can feel my center doing a kind of like little tiny movement itself, like a figure eight or
Yeah.
something. It's got its own orbit. And if I focus on the center doing that little figure eight, I feel like that's what's moving and everything else is a consequence. Rather than like, I am moving my arms and everything else is a consequence, right?
We're working on, for example, you know, somebody grabs your wrist, there's a big movement, but there's a little motion that sets up the big motion. A little bit of beat or a mini wave that sets the larger motion in motion. Or the center, the space still, and boom, boom, it segues into a variety of different movements. I start to think everything is too heavy. Boom. Boom. Imagination's not heavy. So you see that motion right there. The blind goes dark room, blind goes up, light comes in. Boom, boom. And at the top, believe it or not, there's a space. Boom. Boom. And there's a room before the blind goes up. And then there's that room filled with light. Boom, boom, boom. As I do that, it's not just an idea. Imagination is not mental. I asked Robert Fraser once, I said, man, he's a psychologist. I said, imagination, mental. I said, hell no. Boom, 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 boom. Now I switch grips from thumb's face to thumb's. Boom, boom. Now this motion, it's a little thicker. If I switch here, it's a little freer. Just the change of the grip. Boom, boom. I was, for example, go here. Boom, boom, boom. What am I getting here that I didn't get here? Boom, boom. 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 I'm getting a rounder feeling. Boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom. So, you know, the imagination space, if I don't know, some level I can be in it, but then I start to think. And when I start to think, I'm not in that space anymore. Or if I think, the space comes in, but I keep thinking, and the space is hit or miss. That's why imagination is funny, because I'm thinking, and all of a sudden, something comes through my imagination, maybe a creative solution I didn't see before. Go, whoa, it was thinking. No, it was just my thinking for a second, shut up, and sort of came up. Boom, 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 boom. Back here, boom, boom. Like a little movements here. Boom, boom. You mentioned the little movements. Boom, boom. That's a pause, 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 that's a pause. That's a space, 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 that's a space. So, to some degree, it gets more complex, but to itself, it's not. Imagination, I can imagine things mentally and they get more complex. Your imagination by itself doesn't do that. I'm a drummer, for example, the beats are boom, boom. But then again, brushes, boom, 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 same beats, boom, boom, softer, boom, 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 boom. Okay. Anything?
Just that I'm doing the movement, doing movements, right? Moving around. And my focus is on where my center is at any given time. And that seems to increase the body awareness and the sense of flow and stuff like that. So like I focus on the center and I get the circle somehow. Not quite sure how that works.
Well, that's a primary thing. You focus on the center. There's a circle around that center. And that circle runs both up and down. And up. Okay. Conversely, if you're going into the circle, the center starts to show up. So they're connected. Center to circle or circle to center. For me, the circle represents more mind. And the center represents more the body. But that's just maybe too rough a generalization. Boom, 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 boom. Okay? Anything?
No, I mean, I just agree with that.
Yeah. And, for example, as I sort of hang out in more of that imagination place, oftentimes I'm going to pick up a quality. Quality is freedom. Freedom. If I start to think the movements get too heavy, all right, or conversely, they get too loose. But within that, now that, there are about 2 or 3 segue transitions in that motion. And I'm repeating them, not so much by memorizing, but just let them replay. So freedom, not as an idea. Imagine, feel, imagine, feel. Now we're working a little bit the body. For example, this ground here. But it's not, I'm grounded. It's my ground is. I'm connected to it, but I'm not trying to do ground. And there's a circle here. but I know circles, so I'm going to try to do it. It gets too heavy, or I float off. Boom, boom, boom. And here, I'm starting to pick up an energy beat going that way, and an energy beat going that way. Boom, boom. Of course, those beats can translate into movements of a staff. When I go that way, I think I'm a baseball player. Right? When I go that way, I think I'm a basketball player. And then the ball, boom, boom, rhythm, beat, boom, boom. So, you know, the great athletes, they sometimes they touch an energy dimension. Problem with, if you're just a jock, you have it, then your body goes at a certain age. And we're back to this one. Boom, 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 boom. And we're back to space transition. But there's about about 1 to 4 or 5 different space transitions into that. And they kind of line up to each other. Yeah. Play around for a little bit, okay? Bring up the sun so maybe I can. Cliff, anything you notice?
Yeah, there's kind of like crests and troughs of
Okay.
relative energy.
Okay.
Like there's like high energy moments and low energy moments.
Okay.
But it's still a continuous thing. And like I could, like if I were dividing up my movement the way we say, for example, divide the movements into the Tai Chi forms into like these sort of named segments.
Yeah.
I would say those divisions would be on some level kind of arbitrary, right? Like it's all one big thing. And like if I were to take all my movement and make a kata out of it, right? I would have to say, okay, well, first you do this, and then that's movement number 1, and then you do this, and that's movement number 2. But that's kind of arbitrary. I could combine 1 and 2 and call it 1, right? You know, and take movements 3, 4, and 5 and call that one thing. It's all a continuous kind of wave generation. That's what I'm noticing.
Yeah. Well, you know, Hikizuchi Sensei, I think he quoted O Sensei as saying, "There's no kata in Aikido." Now, certain movements, you know, we repeat movements, right, left, entering, turning, whatever. But I think a lot of that is that, you know, if you are coming from that imagination place, not just imagining, but imagine feel, is in the moment new. If you're kind of, for example, taking this motion and repeating it, yeah, okay, now I start to do it better, I start to understand, and I start to get tired, and I start to drift, I start to do a lot of things right there, okay? Make a kata out of it. Well, people kind of like katas because they're kind of, this is what I'm supposed to do, okay? And the kata is oftentimes, it's a beginning place. Okay, now we go here, boom, there's a transition, boom, boom. This is rhythm or beat here, boom, 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 boom. Now, several movements, boom, another transition, space, boom, a little bit more circle in that one. The rhythm timing has changed. Now we got sloppy. I do something like that. Okay. But you're in the feel experience mode. And to some degree, when you're that way, then you're kind of right, sort of like, to some degree, you're right in your game, so to speak. Defining what the game is. It's exploring yourself. Okay. The universe is energy and energy movement, as are we. Okay. The way Einstein put it, I like to quote him: the universe is multidimensional, as are we. Now, we use in the Do Sensei's Bobby trying this, sort of may get some moves. Robert refines those moves a little better, okay? Still a little too heavy. Nado starts to kind of let go, begins to feel the beginnings of flow. Nado Sensei kind of boom, 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 starting to catch rhythms, movements, beats, spaces, boom, boom, boom. And there's more. Okay, anything?
Yeah, so when I was a karate student as a teenager, my sensei, Preston Poindexter sensei, had us as first cue, create our own kata. And then we had to, among all the other, like literally 9 other katas that I had to do for my Shodan test, or a small part of my Shodan test, I had to perform the kata I had created. And I being young, I did flashy moves like flying kicks and things like that were part of it. But I had to do more than make this jagged thing that was like, okay, first this move, then that move, then that move, right? I had to learn how to make it once I had decided the order in which, or the way I decided the order in which is what flowed, right? Like I would do a move and like, okay, that feels good. All right, what do I want to do next? And I would like try to create something or choose something that would flow, right? I was learning to improvise and also make that improvisation something that worked in a flow. It was a little bit like doing jazz, really, right? Like, okay, I did this great jazz solo, now I write it down, right? Like I transcribe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit like that, right? Like there's the in the moment, and then there's the transcription. And then, well, what can you learn from the transcription? Hopefully, if you practice the transcribed solo, you can get an idea of the flow that was in the solo, and then maybe make your own solos that aren't kata, that aren't form, right? But are reactions to the moment, to life, to the light, to the temperature of the room, to where the furniture is so you don't hit the furniture, right? If you're practicing at home, right? So I think there's this idea that katas were like some master had to defend themselves against some group of attackers, and then after they defended themselves they wrote it all down. That, I mean, it's a myth origin, but it does speak to a truth of you want to be in that flow, and any kata should be something that helps the student be in that flow, or the 30 movement form, which you created in a similar way, but is not like supposed to be a kata, like a rigid thing, right? That should help the student. The Tai Chi forms should help the student flow, right? Learn how to breathe, learn how to move, right? I mean, it's all that. So that's the kind of thing that is bubbling up as I'm practicing today.
Okay, good. Good. Now, for example, this motion, I'm sitting in a chair, right? Now, just making it row, I get bored or tired pretty quick. Now, for example, I'm on one of these stools here, so I can feel the hips rotate. Okay. Now, one of the things right here, it's a stool, and the rotation is primarily flat. But the movement is,
Yeah, I
See,
like
I'm-
the stool. It removes a layer of friction.
but there's that motion where I'm experiencing the movement as round, but flat round. And there's that motion. There's that motion. Now that motion, for example, this hip is still going that way. And then this hip goes that way as this hip goes that way. Boom. So even though the physical form is limited by this, but the energy is still free. Now, so here, it's a flat form because the hips are flat, they turn. But when they're flat, there's kind of a set point to reverse. But when now, this is the blind going up and this is the light coming in. They're really almost simultaneous. The blind goes up, the light comes in. We tend to think 1, 2, but boom. And this hip goes that way, but the other hip is going that way. Now it's reversing. This hip is going that way. This hip is going that way. Boom. So you always get one that reflects the flat, the other one represents. Now we reverse. See any of these movements right here. You're getting that sense right there. And right here, we're kind of in that transition phase, we say space. And then all of a sudden, that segues or transitions into motion. Variety, boom, 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 boom. And if I'm hanging out in this space, my mind opens. My mind is not my eye thoughts running around. Mind is not thinking. In fact, what your mind is, basically you can say, what's my psychology of the moment? Explorational, creative. Boom, 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 boom. Free. Then, of course, the mind. I want to know what my mind is. What's my psychology of the moment? I'm going to do this movement until I get it. Yep, that's fine. I'm going to wear my body out and I'm going to get bored and I'm going to do it because somebody says, but all of a sudden, boom, boom, oh, something happens. Oh, there's a transition there, even though it doesn't look like it. Boom, boom. Boom. And that transition, boom, that's the transition, that's the transition. Boom, 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 boom. What am I doing? I'm exploring my psyche, so to speak, my mind, my soul, whatever. Through the body a bit. Body feels looser, freer, looser. Boom, boom, boom. See, I'm twisting and turning. I can do that a little better. But when I do that, there's a little bit of a set to go this way, but if I go this way, that way, there's no set, is there? Yesterday, we were working on what we call the cross step, a cross step, the cross step, the cross step in class. And of course, it's a physical form, but when you sort of take it into kind of your imagination place, that simple movement kind of expands out. And, you know, I can get so lost in that imaginary. Imagination is very real. And I don't know how much of this I can do here. I've seen Stephen Curry, you know, who's 40 years younger than me. He gets really low here. But boom, see, his hips still work in that circle. Boom, 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 boom. What was kind of nice is when you go down here, you feel that in a denser way. But then again, dense, I start to think. Or you can kind of do a higher version of it. What you find is, for example, the wider the base, the harder it is to do that. But it's also true, the lower you go, the lower you go. Mr. Curry plays a couple inches lower than I can get at age 76. He's 36, he's getting up there as a basketball player, but his body's pretty young so far, okay? Anything?
No, that's pretty good. I mean, I'm between you and Curry in age, so I'm kind of half and half.
The 40 years is a pretty big gap. You know, I think he's like 10 inches taller and 40 years younger than I am. But he's kind of like a hero archetype. So you ask me, a lot of my teachers are dead. So, you know, who do I study? Well, I study him. The other day, you know, I was surfing YouTube and there was a compendium of Bruce Lee's Green Hornet fight scenes. And just watching, you know, Bruce Lee was, you know, he's really good because out of nothing, boom, he explodes. And what was kind of nice about the Green Hornet stuff, and on one level, there's a 30-minute action TV show, which wasn't much. The Green Hornet as a character was a dud, all right? But it had Bruce Lee as Kato. And one of the things about Lee, you know, is that, you know, he's like, you know, he's kind of in that mode where he's picking everything up. You know, and, you know, he did a lot of crazy things like jumping in the air and striking, you know, which he wouldn't necessarily do. But boom, like a boom, 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 boom. So you go from nothing, boom, into something, nothing, to boom, something. And just, you know, just watching him. I mean, it's a different beat rhythm because, you know, he was interested in generating explosive force, right? But I just remember there was nothing like it on TV. Green Hornet, I think, was Friday nights, 1966 to 67. And then, you know, 7:30 to 8, and then past January, then I'd kind of watch the Avengers at 10 o'clock. They were both on ABC. Then I watched Diana Rigg, you know. And on the Avengers. And what was interesting, a lot of her fight stuff was not supposed to be fight stuff. I mean, a lot of her martial movements were kind of supposed to be sensual, sexy. So you go from Bruce Lee, boom, and to her, you know, and she would kind of, the fight scene music come on, she'd kind of light up a certain way. So it was, that was pretty instrumental, I guess, in my doing martial arts, was watching Bruce Lee and then watching the Avengers with Diana Rigg. So anyway, those are, you know, just the, okay. Now, for example, we talked about, you know, just sensing, okay? What happened, I think it was, well, last month, the US men's basketball team won the gold medal. And they had a real tough time in the semifinals and the finals, but they beat Serbia in the semis, and in the finals they beat France, yeah. And Curry stepped up. They wouldn't have won it without Curry. The rest of the world's so good now. But one of the things that I noticed, for example, watching a game, you get caught up in the game. But, you know, I started watching, okay, the, shall I put it, I started watching his, you know, just the highlights of him. And what really amazed me was, you know, he's, you know, he gets the ball. And of course, you see the ball go in, you see the game. Oh, yeah, he made a shot. But when you see it repeatedly, you're standing in a pool of calm energy. Pool of calm energy. In other words, there's motion, motion, there's that pool. Motion, 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 there's that pool. Motion, 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 there's that pool. Okay. And there's that pool. And all of a sudden, out of that pool, there's the springboard effect. What is the springboard effect? Well, bong springs. But if you just jump, then you have to kind of go deep to trigger the springboard. So calm pool of energy, boom, boom. And calm pool of energy, springboard. And then, what I kind of noticed, for example, when you shoots, boom, that leg tends to float. And so, you know, from underneath, you have that calm pool of energy. Then you have springboard trigger off of that. And the upper part, jumping out of a plane. The way Einstein put it, if you did that, you wouldn't feel your weight. You feel impact if that's what you did, but you got a parachute, which opens, boom. And the moment the parachute opens and you go from going that way, free fall, boom. And so I kind of began to notice, you know, that boom, boom, he has that pool of calm energy. And then boom, there's that springboard, which isn't triggered with a jump, it's triggered with a little boom. And then boom, of course he jumps, but there's that springboard. And right there at that top, boom, the parachute opens, boom, because he floats down, you know? I was thinking, that's pretty cool. Because you could look at anybody who's, I mean, crazy genius at what he does. I don't know if his IQ is genius level, but his movement, his ability to seize the moment, be creative, do things that other people can't do, at least at this time. There'll be somebody that can do it. But, and what happened is then I said, well, you know, I'll watch, there's LeBron and there's KD on that team. And I went back and watched them. And they're really good. They jump and do that, but they don't have those dimensions that Curry has. Anything?
No, that all, that makes sense.
Yeah. And so, I had to look at it and go, let me kind of go into sense imagine when I'm watching him. And if you watch him in a game, you go, oh, great shot. Because you're watching the game, there's just motion back and forth. But if you go into the highlights, you see repeated and you go, you pick up certain things. And because he's got the springboard, but then he kind of floats down. I'm thinking, oh yeah, there's an upper thing, which is kind of like, I'm going to drop out of a plane. I don't feel my weight. Boom. It's up in the air for a second. You don't feel your weight. But then the chute opens. So boom. So that moment of his release is not just off. See, the release isn't off of the springboard. Springboard. Parachute. And the second that, then you see that beautiful arc he gets. Boom. So I have a lot of fun with that stuff. You can train. I mean, there are certain things, for example, you're seated, Kokyu-ho, you're trying to lift somebody. Boom. Boom. Your partner goes up with the parachute opening. Boom. But there you say there's free fall, there's gravity, isn't there? There's a ground there. Instead of trying to lift here, the chute opens. That's where you're starting to tap the imagination place. Other than that, you get better at doing the form. Cross step. I was trying to show this to Steve Sao sensei. Springboard. Uke goes, boom! It's kind of cool. Right? There are certain things that you don't get with just your physical training. And so, what we're talking about today is it's not just imaginary, that's the whole thing. If you think, either drift here or you float off. Imagination is a place. In a lot of ways, you don't necessarily access it through the body, but the body comes up more from that direction. Imagine, feel, sense, imagine. And then it's what you do with it. Or he makes those shots. Well, but he's so calm. The game is moving. There's a pool of calm. When he's going up for a shot, there's that pool of calm. Out of that pool of calm, the springboard. He doesn't jump, although he does jump, but you go, which activates the springboard, gets him into the air. But the moment he shoots, there's that parachute opening. This way he gets that big arc with that beautiful spin. Bang. That's all pretty cool. So, anything?
Well, to combine Einstein with Steph Curry, when you're in free fall, you don't feel your weight, but the moment the parachute opens, you feel your weight, right? Because you feel the force pulling up because your weight is going down and you're back in that space. But paradoxically, you're also floating rather than falling. So
Yeah.
it's like, and you need both, right? Like if you jump out of an airplane and you're a parachutist, you can't open the chute immediately, right? Like you do have to fall a little bit till the safe and proper height to open that parachute. So there's that. Like everything has its moment, right? Like Steph can do that parachute shot, but the timing is important, right? The moment has to be the right moment for the unfolding.
Well, if you get the springboard and shoot it, or you get the springboard and then you do the parachute, springboard parachute, springboard parachute, springboard parachute. And you do that for a while and you go, there's something missing. Yeah, remember the pool of calm, springboard parachute, pool of calm, springboard parachute. Pool of calm. And you kind of see him sometimes, you know, when he's just boom, he's in a flow. He's running around going, oh, look at what I did. You know, and then you kind of celebrate sometimes, you know, by going down. And, you know, I've seen him, as I said, I don't get down there as well, but, you know, not bad. See how the hips are fluid and free. Yeah. Pool of calm. Pool of calm. See, the cut doesn't start with your arms. The cut starts, boom, with that. You ignite the springboard. Yes, you're going to also jump, although we don't jump when we cut. Boom, boom, boom. Pool of calm. Now, the thing I'm missing here, boom, is the closing motion. Boom, boom, boom. And what happens is that the pool of calm, the springboard, and the parachute opening, boom, that's a single motion movement. Boom. And if I get too caught up in that, I better remember pool of calm. Pool of calm gets me into what I call the imagination space. Oh, it's a body there, it's not just mental. And for Mr. Curry, boom, that's that bubble and nothing but net. And if I'm kind of reaching out there or trying to muscle the ball to the pool of calm. Yes. Imagination is not mental. Springboard, 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 parachute. 1, 2, 3. Boom. Boom. And you know, I can understand all. I'm kind of top to bottom. I get pretty close. And it comes up from under. So whether you're swinging your bow can or trying to shoot like Stephen Curry, it pays to develop that dimension of yourself, the imagination place, with some movement through the body, the Aikido training, just doing staff like we did. So you'll still say, I think he tried to get people to open up and find that imagination place. He talked about gods and goddesses, archetypes, energies, qualities, floating bridges of heaven, high planes of heaven, mythical boats that the kami used to travel from heaven to earth, earth to heaven. Boom, boom, boom. Vibrational reality, things like that. So he was pretty cool. Anyway, before we go, anything?
Yeah, I was kind of feeling that I was doing the sword cuts, and I was feeling again the movement of my center, and it did feel a little bit like doing the like bent knee Steph Curry thing we were doing earlier.
Yeah, okay.
I could see the connection there. So I could feel the connection there, right?
Yeah. If you kind of watch him, he kind of does that stuff because he works his core. He does a lot of work. I mean, he's 36 years old and he's a grandpa playing with young bucks. But sometimes those young guys train with him and they can't hold up, they can't keep up with him. There are guys that are a lot younger, 10 years younger than him, and they train with him and they throw up. So there's something that he's doing psychophysical that's really cool to watch. I mean, the whole thing, if you're an athlete, eventually your body kind of ages you out. But there's something he has on other levels, and maybe, going into politics, business, things like that. We'll probably see him for a while. Anyway, we will be at Mountain View on Sunday. The following Sunday, which is the 29th, from 2 to 6, there's kind of a memorial event for Frank Stilvey Sensei, whom we lost earlier this year. So I'll be teaching the class on the 29th, but I'll be heading off after the class to the memorial event. I think it's pretty much open to everybody. Okay? And I think some notices have been sent out if you are on the dojo mailing list.
Yeah, I got something about that. I'll have to check, but I do have that day blocked off.
Okay, all right, so good. So we will have class, just that I'll be heading over to the event, as will probably a number of other people. Okay, so what we're going to do is let's first of all stop the recording.